Hey guys, Buzz Glover here with a second attempt at a interview with one of my students, Bill King. Actually, you've probably seen the previous one, which gave a bunch of great information. But I talked to Bill from time to time, and throughout the last year, I kept saying we need to redo that video because the production quality was so poor. I had some internet issues dropping out and some sound issues. So what I did is I connected with Bill again, and we decided to cover some of the same things, but actually add a few different nuances of the business. So if you want to get some type of feel for the business or what you are already doing in a business that you've already started or that you're looking to get started in BizLoan Consultants or BizLoan Consulting, this will give you a lot of the inside scoop on what to expect while you're in your business. Specifically in this video, we talk a little bit about Bill's background and his experience to give you some idea of what he knew before becoming a broker. We talk about a deal flow from beginning to end, what it looks like on his end. I know I've done other videos on this, but it was interesting to get his insight into that. Some of the new broker challenges, including bridging the income gap. One of the biggest things every entrepreneur needs to do is try to figure out how to make money in the time, during while they're ramping up their new business, and how it is a challenge and how it's just one of those things that you sometimes need to make the leap on. How COVID has affected Bill's business and how it's affecting the loan brokering business. And at the end, Bill kind of tells you that he does work with other brokers if the situation is right, and I let him get into a little bit of that as well. But either way, I thought you'd find it useful, and why don't we just jump right in? Appreciate you joining me. Hey guys, Buzz Glover here. Welcome back to BizLoanConsultants.com. It's been a long time since I've done a video. In fact, this is a video that I've been meaning to do for some time here. I'm here with Bill King from Four Kings Capital, and I'll let him kind of do a quick introduction for himself here in a second. But one of the reasons that I wanted to have this second video with him is, first of all, he's an outstanding student. He had prior banking experience, which is a big plus, so he hit the ground running in his business. And the last recording that we had, really, much to my shame, I tried to do it on my boat. And here, let me adjust my camera here. I tried to do it on my boat. I had a bad internet connection. I had bad audio. I had bad video, bad lighting. So everything about it, other than the content of where Bill was in his business, was really not up to snuff. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to reconnect with him and find out how things are going in his business. But just one last thing is that Bill and I talk probably, I don't know, every 60 or 90 days. He'll reach out to me, which I appreciate, and kind of fill me in on how things are going in his business. And every time I'm on one of those phone calls with him, I'm thinking to myself, boy, I wish some of my other students could hear what this conversation, because I think the conversations that we have give you a lot of insight into the business. And the cool thing about it is that Bill's niche is kind of fallen into some areas that I wasn't real strong in. SBA, everyone probably knows by now my forte was in equipment finance, and probably 95% of all the deals I funded were in that area. So I'm kind of the true expert in that area, but Bill kind of gets into some areas that I'm not as strong in, so it's a nice compliment to the whole Biz Loan Consultants tribe. So with that said, sorry for the long introduction. Welcome, Bill, and maybe you give me a quick introduction of where you are with your business, and then I have a couple questions that we discussed, and we can go through those.
Great. Well, thanks again for having me, Buzz. My background is I started probably about 20 years ago in commercial banking, and I was a commercial lender. I managed commercial lending teams, and at one point I was a market president for a bank, and was fortunate to be a voting member of loan committee for a few of the banks that I worked at. So the whole purpose of telling you that is that gave me a unique insight into the entire credit process. And one of my frustrations as a banker was that I hated having to say no on a deal, especially if it was one that I know could get done somewhere else. So a few years ago, when I took Buzz's training, my wife and I decided to start our own brokerage company, and we were doing it part-time for a while, and then I started full-time last year. I decided to leave my banking career and go full-time into the business, probably almost 2 years ago now, maybe a year and a half. And that's where we are now. And like you were saying, when you first start off in this business, you kind of start off as a generalist because you're trying to get deals. So you look at all different referral sources. But a lot of what I've been getting and where I've been having success has been in my background with SBA, a little bit of commercial real estate, but not huge commercial real estate deals. And trying to get more into equipment finance. I am a CLFP and used to do equipment finance as a banker. So now I'm trying to add that to the mix. So I hope that wasn't too long of an intro, but that's kind of where I am right now.
No, it's awesome. Just so everyone knows, a CFLP is a commercial finance lease professional, I guess.
Yeah, commercial lease finance professional designation.
It's
And
interesting with all the equipment finance that I've done. I have the book and I read through it, and my feeling is that I would go through that test and not have any issues with it once I kind of reviewed the material, but I've never taken it, and it's probably something that I should put on my roadmap after all these years. But in some respects, I look at it, I'm like, do I really need this? But I guess it's nice to have the designation. So, but congratulations on that. And by the way, I keep looking up at your bourbon up on the right-hand corner, which is awesome. But anyways, well, yeah, thanks for the introduction. Well, this might be a good segue into the first question that I had prepared for you. And it was one of the more popular things I did in some of the content that I give out to aspiring students. What does a deal look like from beginning to end when, and maybe even include in the beginning how you kind of developed a relationship? I know you have a lot of banking relationships and so forth, but maybe you could just, choose one deal. And I know each deal kind of has its own little curves and twists on how you might find the deal and what you ask the customer for. But if you could just maybe walk us through what the flow of one deal looks like for you, I think it'd be helpful for anyone who's looking to get into the business.
sure. Well, I use the annuity approach that you outline in your book and your training of calling on potential referral sources. So I'm involved in the CCIM with commercial realtors. I'm involved in North Texas Commercial Association of Realtors. I'm involved with various other organizations here in town. And I stay involved with bankers that I know, because you know that bankers are a great two-way street referral source, and we send them deals. Or in the equipment finance world, we're dealing with equipment salespeople. So what'll usually happen is I'll get a call or an email introduction from a potential referral source, and they'll tell me, I've got this deal and this is the situation. If it's a banker, they'll let me know more of the real credit history of how it got on their desk and what the challenges are. If it's a commercial realtor or a business broker, maybe, usually it'll have more of a spin of, this is such a great deal, I don't understand why the other bank wouldn't do it. So my first step is I first size up as much as I can from the referral source. If I'm talking to them on the phone, I'll find out what I can about the borrower. I believe it or not, I ask questions about their personality. I try to understand the situation as best as I can. And then once I get all the information, in a normal case, they'll give me the phone number and I'll reach out directly to the borrower. And one thing that I do is I'm really big on keeping my referral sources in the loop, so they know that I've made contact, they know what's going on. And my relationship with them is, I'm going to keep you as involved as you want me to. If you just want to hear, hey, I'm giving you the deal, let me know when it's done, then that's what we'll do. If you want to know play by play, we're gathering a package, we're talking with the lender, then I'll keep you posted as much as the borrower allows me without revealing their financial info. Then the next step is then I talk with the borrower and I find out, one of my first questions is first understanding where the deal has been, if it's already been shopped to a few different sources, understanding what happened, why was it turned down, was it delayed, what's the story, usually deals don't get to a broker as their first choice. So let's be honest with ourselves. We're usually working on deals that either has been turned down or wasn't packaged correctly or something, why it got to us. And once I size it up, I also ask them about their relationship with their existing bank to see if they also took it to the regular banker. And then once I get an idea of if I think it's going to be a workable deal, I'll go over my process with them. I explain that I do that initial evaluation. I then gather a complete package. What I use is Dropbox for my folders. So I set up a folder in my Dropbox account that's designated for that deal, and I keep a separate folder for active deals, and I have subfolders for each active deal. I do the same thing with closed deals, and then I do the same thing with dead deals. So let's say I was dealing with XYZ widget company. I would set up a folder for that. I would give the client the link to where he can put the information that I've requested in there. It's usually historical financial info, personal financial info, depends on the deal, but I typically gather a full banking package. I'll give him my fee and confidentiality agreement and make sure we're on the same page on that. And then I start working the phones. I start calling based off of what I know. I'll start calling the top 2 or 3 lenders I think would be interested in the deal. For example, I had a mini storage deal the other day that probably about $1.5 million deal. Loan amount's going to be, 75% of that. So it's like $1.2 million. The challenge of it is it's an older property and it's in a rural area and it has good occupancy, but the cash flow isn't impressively strong. And the borrower was under the impression he could get 4% money on a 30-year amortization. And that is a special use property, and it's an older special use property. And your national lenders are not going to touch that because it's in a community that has less than 10,000 people. So I right away knew that I was looking at a local community bank that was okay in the area, and we're probably looking at 20-year, 25-year amortization at best. Your pricing was probably going to be 5-6%. So I sent him back my fee agreement saying, this is what I think we can get. And here's how my fee works. If you're interested, let's talk. A lot of times what happens if a borrower is way off base of what they think they can get versus reality, they're going to go shop a little bit on their own. And this borrower, I'm letting him go through that. And when he bounces his head against the wall and finds out that not only is it going to be a tough deal to get what he thinks he can get, you actually need to know the community bankers in that area to get it, he'll probably come and we'll move forward with the fee agreement. So that one is in process, but I don't have a full package yet. So I'll pause there and let you ask me some questions and I can go through full packet and underwriting and all that if you'd like.
Yeah, actually, that's awesome. And I do have a question. So it was a perfect pause point. One of the things that I found, and this is just my, many years of experience brokering loans and having made relationships with other brokers, was that some brokers used like a trickle type ask when they were asking for credit. And I kind of never agreed with it, but they had actually had a good reason for it. And I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on this. And what I'm talking about is I knew brokers that would first ask for a credit app, just like fill out this credit app and send it to me. And then the next day they would say, hey, I want your, shut that off. I want your last 3 years tax returns. And then the next day, but they did this very consciously because what happens, and it actually happened to me quite often, is that when you ask a borrower for all this information up front, it's some work for them. It might take them 3-4 hours, depending on how handy they are and, if they have things well organized in their computer. And so they put it off because they're running their business, they're doing the day-to-day, and then you call them back and say, hey, did you get all that information to me? So what's your experience with that? Maybe even in your prior life in the banking, I mean, did you had reps under you? Did you, was there some type of strategy in that area, or is just it sounds like you did it the same way I did. You had an upfront ask and here's a checklist of everything I need.
Yeah, that's a good question. As a matter of fact, I was reading some quote advice for brokers yesterday that recommend doing exactly what you described, where you only get what you need in order to do like a pre-qual, and then you screen the deal and then you keep piece by piece asking for more information. I generally don't like that approach, but it does scare some borrowers off when you ask for everything up front. So it's a matter of chancing losing a deal. So what I would recommend to brokers, if they're concerned of which way to go with that, because the other option is that if you go little by little, you could frustrate the borrower where they say, look, just ask me for everything you need at once rather than going back and forth with this mother may I stuff when the things that I'm going to need are from the same place. So if you need all of it, let me get it all together. So the way that I bridge that gap is I'll explain to the borrower up front saying, look, the total process is going to be X, Y, and Z. This is how we're going to walk through it. In order to get you a complete approval, we're going to need all this information. Now, if you just want me to do a pre-screen to put some feelers out and see if we have somebody that might be interested subject to reviewing your tax returns, reviewing your credit, reviewing your personal info, we can do that, or you can give me the full packet up front. So sometimes I'll give them the option to feel out their personality. If it's somebody that's real protective of their information, like I had one the other day that was like that, where they only wanted to give me the summary and the property info, but they didn't want to give me any of their financials yet, where their logic was, well, when you have a borrower or lender that likes this type of deal, subject to verifying the 25% down, subject to verifying credit, then I'll give you all the other info. So, though that's kind of a way of answering it both ways. But the way that I would say to handle it would be just to frame it up where they understand, look, this is going to be the whole roadmap. We can just do A today, or we can do A, B, C, D right now.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Which actually, and I think you touched on this when you originally were going through your process. One thing that you do and you do well, and I didn't do when I first got started, was you have the package in hand. Now you're reaching out to funding sources that make sense for that deal. And I think in a previous call, I'm not sure if it was on the last video we did, you had mentioned that, hey, you're pretty transparent. You tell the lenders, hey, this is going out to 3 lenders. And because I can't wait 2 weeks for you to go to loan committee or whatever you need to do. And then you come back with a decline, and I'm still starting all over. So I like that process. So maybe you can get into that a little bit. But beyond that, maybe take us, once you get an approval, what happens after that? How are you getting paid and so forth?
Sure. What usually happens is, and then depending on the size of the deal, the process may take a little longer. For example, if you're doing SBA and commercial real estate deals, they have more of a involved, stretched out process. For example, a lot of times the lender will do what we call a pre-flight, where they do an initial underwriting where they don't really drill down on everything, but they still look at the financials, but they don't do a full analysis. And they'll come back with a term sheet, but it's a soft term sheet where they try to get it off the street. So they're going to say, look, if I'm going to go into full underwriting, we're going to want, some type of a commitment fee to move forward. And usually that fee is refundable. But particularly that happens in SBA and sometimes in commercial real estate. At the least, they're going to want a signed letter that's from the borrower saying, look, if you can get me these terms, I'm interested. And then at that point, it goes into full underwriting where the credit analyst gets involved and they start going back and forth with questions. And assuming everything goes smoothly, then we'll get a final approval. Hopefully the commitment matches what the term sheet outlined. And then if the borrower accepts the approval, then we move forward to the next phase, which in commercial real estate is going to be ordering third-party documents. You're going to have appraisal, title work, all that fun stuff. If it's a rush deal, you may already be working on that stuff along the way. But I'm typically paid at closing. So if it's a commercial real estate deal, depending on the bank, I'll submit my fee agreement to the title company as one of the third-party expenses, just like an appraisal, title work, environmental. And depending on the title company, I'll get paid right out of closing, or I may be paid outside of closing directly from the borrower. But usually it's around within a day or two of the actual closing happening. With SBA lending, it's similar but a little different because there's particular forms you need to fill out as a broker for the SBA deals. And on some of those, your fees are paid by the lender, and some they're paid by the borrower. And there's a new rule in SBA this year for brokers that we can't get paid on both sides anymore for an SBA loan. Used to be you could make a fee from the borrower and you disclose to them, look, I might find a lender that pays me a fee or I might not. Some lenders pay fees, some don't. And then you can make both sides of it. Everybody knows you're upfront and honest about it, but it was perfectly allowable to say, look, I've invested time with you, I'm consulting you, I deserve whatever fee I'm charging. If a lender pays me a fee, that's so much the better, but it doesn't affect your deal. Now that rule has been changed to where you can only collect from one side. So my modified fee agreement tells the borrower, look, I'm going to make X number of dollars on this deal. Either you're going to pay it or the lender's going to pay it, but that's what I'm going to make. And I'm very transparent about it. So in an SBA deal, there'll be additional paperwork I'll need to fill out prior to closing. And then at closing, usually I'm paid out by the client directly, or like I said, if it's from the lender, they'll cut me a check.
Interesting. All great information. Couple things I thought about while you were going through that. One is the sales cycle length of one deal versus another. The one thing I always enjoyed about equipment finance is that typically a borrower wants the equipment, unless it's some huge piece of equipment, cranes, for instance, sometimes take a long time, but they get delivery on the equipment, and as long as all the credit work's been done, the funding takes place. Could be within two weeks on a very short side, and maybe 6 weeks on the long side. So you can do a lot more flow business versus the commissions. At least because I was doing small to medium ticket leasing. So my deals ran anywhere from typically $30,000 up to $250,000. But I was doing way more of them, and my referral source was robust with sales reps who sold equipment that their average ticket size was in that range. But you did bring up another thing that I have a question about, and something that you do well that I never did. So I think that it would be helpful. You mentioned that and this used to happen to me quite often. Maybe I'll give you a little groundwork on this. I used to get deals in that were kind of outside of the box for me. Mm-hmm. Working capital deals would be a good example. AR, accounts receivable finance, factoring type deals. And to be honest, when I was really busy and I had a really robust pipeline for equipment deals, I would just hand those off. I wouldn't make any money on them. But you kind of came up with a neat solution where you say, hey, you know what? Plus, those types of deals are hard to get paid on, at least in my experience. They were always difficult to figure out how to get paid on them. You've come up with a kind of a consultative fee. Hey, you know what? I'm going to do this for you. I'm just going to charge you a flat fee. And maybe you can get into that a little bit on how you decide who's going to get that versus a brokerage fee or commission.
Sure. No, that's a good question. One of the things that I started doing, particularly this year and late last year, is, as you mentioned, the sales cycle on the types of deals that I do is very long. When you're doing real estate, you're doing SBA, you've got a very long sales cycle. And I'll get into it later. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing more equipment finance and factoring this year. And I'll cover that in a minute after I answer your question. But in addition to that, what I do is with some relationships, I'll just have a flat consulting fee as a minimum. In some cases, that'll be all that I charge. In other cases, that'll be what I charge up front. And then if there's what I call a success fee, which is similar to the full fee for getting the deal done, then that's added to it. So let's say that we had a deal that I'll give you an example. I was working with a construction company, a home builder that was trying to get a line of credit to do some spec homes. The bank that he was working with was just being too restrictive. And based off of his financials and everything, he could qualify for a pretty good line of credit with a community bank, getting a good, what I call spec to pre-sale ratio. There's a lot of things specific to home construction that I know about, having been in the business, that I knew I was able to find for this guy. But it wasn't going to be a very large deal, and I didn't know how much the line was going to be. And when you set the line up, it's recurring. So it's really hard to calculate a commission per deal. So I just had a flat consulting fee for him. I said, look, I'm going to charge you X number of dollars, and I'm going to go find you a lender that can do this deal. In some cases, I make that refundable. In some cases, I make it where it's just a flat fee period because I know I'm going to spend a lot of time on it. The way that I determine when I do that versus when I don't is really based off of the difficulty of the credit. If I think that the borrower is going to be a pain and I think they're going to be difficult to work with and I know their deal is hard and I'm going to take a lot of time to get it done, there's going to be an upfront fee because we're going to find out, are you serious? Do you realize how challenging your deal is, or are you just kicking tires? And if they're kicking tires, I'll send them down the street to another broker. I mean, there's plenty of them out there that will chase any deal, and I'm happy to send them away. So that's one of the things that I do in deciding. And also when I have clients that I know are going to have an ongoing need where they're always, like you said, buying equipment, they need working capital. You know there's going to be things that are going to be ongoing. In a case like that, I'll do more of a long-term agreement where I say, look, I'm going to be here on call. Anything you need, I'll take care of you. Sometimes they even will get me on the phone just to negotiate and talk to their banker because the banker will know who I am or he'll find out who I am and know that I'm going to keep him honest in what he's offering to the borrower.
Yeah, all great information. And the other thing people got to keep in mind, business owners don't have the time to go out and review banking relationships. A lot of business owners might have a commercial loan officer that they deal with, but really don't know them, don't have a strong relationship. They don't have the time to go out and go to 3 or 4 community, local, regional banks and to investigate what might be a better relationship for them. And that's where you can provide a lot of add value into the relationship. And it sounds like that's what you're doing with that consulting fee. I actually thought of one other thing that you made me think of something. You had mentioned that some funding sources, and this is kind of a big beware, at least in the equipment finance, and there's some occasionally over the years, I'm going to say I've probably run into this I don't know, 5 or 6 times where you get unscrupulous lenders who ask for that commitment fee to get that deal off the street with no intention. They don't even look at the deal. They just ask you for that fee. And then, and this is really what gives the industry a bad name. Then a lot of times it's non-refundable. So they're making tons of fee income off of this. And for a new broker to kind of do their due diligence in this area, it's difficult. I'm not sure what I can give them any direction in that area, but I just want them to know that if one of their funding sources that they don't have experience with is asking for a commitment fee, probably one of the questions is this refundable? I mean, if you meet this criteria, which you've already discussed with the borrower, hey, if I can get you this rate and this term and this much equity put into the deal, your fee agreement is basically saying, I got you everything that you wanted. Now you owe me the fee. But if the lender says that they are able to do all that and then they don't step up to the plate, that's where you get into trouble. And that's happened to me a few times. And it's one of the things that always soured me a little bit about the industry that we're in. But any comments on that, or have you ever run into that? Or
Well, not yet, fortunately, but I have heard of it. And to your point, that's why, we got to do the best we can to do our due diligence with the lending sources that we're working with. I know the challenge in the equipment business is that you have so many brokers posing as lenders where they're like super brokers, and you find out that you're 3 levels down in a broker chain, which is why I'm fortunate that I'm involved in the NEFA, the National Equipment Finance Association, and the American Association of Commercial Finance Brokers. Working through those organizations gives me the ability to deal with some of the lending sources that I know have a little more experience working with brokers, and I know I'm working with a direct lender. I'm not saying those are the only ones that you work with, but those are my top 5 or 10 equipment lenders that I work with. I make sure I vet through sources like that.
Cool. This probably goes back to our previous recording, but maybe just tell me a little bit about what's going on in your business right now. Any successes that you recently had? I realize, towards the end of this interview, I will talk a little bit about COVID, but because we're right kind of in the middle of it, hopefully, hopefully towards the end, but who can tell? But yeah, maybe just some of the successes that you've had so far, and maybe some of the things that are on the horizon that you think are coming up.
Sure. The COVID thing, of course, slowed us down. We were blowing and going through the end of last year. And then once that hit, a lot of the lending sources, I'm not going to say shut down, but they kind of did, to where they were all deciding how they're going to move forward. So I had a lot of deals that were in process that just stretched, where they just took forever to get closed. I've got a large deal that's supposed to close, knock on wood, next week. That's going to be a multi-million-dollar SBA loan I've been working on for 4 or 5 months. And, that's going to be a nice commission on that deal. And it's, a lot of time we've put into it. I've maintained some ongoing consulting business. I've got a few factoring relationships. And the good thing about factoring is that you get residual income on those. Once you set up the account, depending on your relationship with the factoring company, you're going to get recurring income on their usage for either a couple of years or in some cases, the life of the account. So when I look at my income streams, and that's one of the reasons I've been focusing more on getting more equipment deals this year and more factoring deals, is because I view SBA and real estate deals as being the long sales cycle big hits. They're your big gazelles and your elephants, and but they take time. So you gotta manage your liquidity in between. The factoring takes a little while to get paid as well once you set them up, but they're residual income. So a factoring deal you may set up now, get them approved, they start factoring with the player, but you're not going to get your first check for another month. And then, but after that, you keep getting recurring checks as long as they're continuing to factor. And then the third, of course, as you mentioned with equipment finance, that's your quick hit deals, especially when you're in the app only section, deals under 250, where, like you said, you can get paid in a week or two. Your hits aren't going to be as big, but they're going to be more, you can make money right now. So I use those 3 levels of deal type to try to stabilize my income flow. And that's one of the reasons why, like I said, I'm focusing and doing more equipment this year than I did last year. And of course, adding more to my factoring too. In my business, I focus on operating businesses. I focus on companies that actually do something, preferably with annual sales between 1 million and 50 million. And credit needs, if it's going to be equipment, I probably am not going to mess with anything under 50,000 unless I have a specific reason. If it's factoring, their needs are going to have to be routinely 100,000 a month at least. And in commercial real estate and SBA, I'm probably not going to mess with anything under 350.
Gotcha.
And for deals that are outside of my scope, that I just decide I don't want to focus on, I'm building relationships with lenders and brokers that I can send those to and hopefully make a commission on. And they know what I do well, and I know what they do well.
Cool. Here's kind of an interesting question. Let's just say that you're a new broker. And I just want to get your opinion on this. You're a new broker. You have all the foundational things taken care of in your business. You have your office set up, you have your website done, you have your logo, you have everything that you need to go out and start building a pipeline of business. What do you think a new broker's, how does he spend his time the best in the beginning? And how, in mine, I always talk about the ebbs and flows of the business, where in the beginning, I spent almost all my time just creating referral sources. And then after I got so many deals in-house, then you have to make decisions on hiring people and everything else, which I kind of did. And then I got out of because I felt like I was back in the corporate world. So maybe just give me your opinion for a new broker who has, like I said, has all the foundational things out of the way, which should only take him a week or two to get done. And now he's ready to go out and start finding business.
My first question for your new broker would be, or the first thing that I would need to know in order to answer your question better would be, does that broker have his financing stable with his household? Is this his only source of income? Is he living paycheck to paycheck? Does he have a war chest put away of a little bit of money to ride out the ups and downs of waiting for a commission to come in? If the answer to those things are no, that you pretty much, you're doing this full time and you need to make money right away, I would focus on equipment first. And if you're, one of the challenges in the equipment world, as is that a lot of these lenders are picky, that you have to be in business a couple of years. To be accepted as a broker, you have to fill out an application. You have to provide them references to show that you are an established broker and you've done deals. So if you haven't, in some cases, they can use the fact that they've been through your course. I've seen that as a way to get around some of the requirements of a new relationship with an equipment finance company. But if you call a company that you want to work with, one of the things that I've done is, if they can't accept me, find out who one of their good brokers is, and I'll be willing to work through a super broker on a deal or two just to get in the door and get going on stuff. So in the equipment world specifically, I don't know if you agree with this because you have a lot more experience than I do. If you're brand new coming in, it's it's okay to do that until you get some more experience under you, in my opinion.
Interesting. You bring up a lot of good points in the way you answered that. Actually, challenges. One of the questions I get from all aspiring entrepreneurs who want to get into this industry is, how do I get approved by funding sources as a new broker? Which is a challenge. There's no doubt. I mean, if you want to go to some of the bigger national equipment finance funding sources, they are going to require some 1 year, some 2 year. So typically, what my response to them is, local and regional banks who have an equipment finance division are typically very easy to get approved by. I mean, typically there's no approval process at all. So that's kind of one of the ways that you can get started and get your deals funded. You mentioned another one, to team up with another broker. As much as I hate co-broker deals, it is a way that you can get into some of the other bigger national funding sources if they allow it. Some don't allow it, and some kind of turn the other way to it. They don't really, it's happening, but they don't really call it their super brokers who are sending this business to them. But the other thing that you brought up, and this has to do with all entrepreneurs, whether you're starting an equipment finance company or a loan brokerage, or you're opening up a restaurant down the road, or whatever you're doing. The biggest decision that I've always had, and when I first got started in the many entrepreneurial experiences that I've had, is how do I bridge the gap from the money that I'm making now to the money I'm going to be making if I do all the right things in this new loan brokerage business or whatever business it is. And there's always a gap there. It's not like you open your doors and the funds start flowing in. It doesn't matter what business you're in. There's always there's time involved that you have to feed your kids, pay your mortgage, pay your utilities, and there's some planning involved in that. But at some point in time, every entrepreneur has to make that decision. They have to say, "Hey, you know what?" And you know what? The entrepreneurs, or I say the aspiring entrepreneurs who never make the leap, are always too scared to bridge that gap. So, and that's actually another very common question that I get. How soon from when I started to when I start making money does this happen? So in an ideal world, you have a partner, a wife, a spouse, or a business partner who's maybe in a different situation than you are, and they can get this business up and running and get deals flowing in. I'm going to say in my case, and I think I talk a lot about this in some of the training that I do, that in the beginning, when I left and I went out on my own, I had left it was actually a large computer manufacturer that I was doing equipment finance, working in the corporate world. Even with that, shorter runway, because I had experience, I still think I was into it maybe 90 days to, I'm thinking 3-4 months. And I was starting to think to myself, oh my God, I was making pretty decent money in that corporate world. And here and I would get a few pops here and there for a couple $1,000s, but I would be like, I made a bad move. And then all of a sudden, my pipeline was very robust at that point. And then all of a sudden, deals started popping. And it was like, oh, thank God I don't have to put up with any of the corporate BS any longer. I'm doing my own thing. I'm playing golf when I want to play golf. I'm able to do a lot of the things I want to do and not put up with play the game that you play in the corporate world. And the income was good. And one other point on this is that if you don't have a lot of income to replace, it makes the decision easier. But you still got to eat, and you still got to pay your bills, and you don't want to get into a situation where you're bad credit and you're not able to do that. But it's I think that's one of the biggest hurdles to anyone getting started in any business. Right. So I'm just throwing it out there. I'm sure you agree with me, but I mean, maybe when you got started, you're probably thinking, hey, you know what? You had a high position in a bank. I'm sure your income was good, and it takes a lot of cannolis to get started, for lack of a better word. So
yeah, no, I left a 6-figure job, and because in my estimation, I think we can do it better being an independent. I view what I do in this business a lot like someone in the commercial insurance business that becomes an independent, where maybe you worked as a captive for an agency and then now you're out on your own and you have access to all the different insurance carriers, and then you're finding the best carrier for your client. That's the way that I view what we do as brokers. We're finding the right lender for the situation and trying to find the right deal and put it in place. So yeah, to your point, I left a very good income. I've been fortunate that my first, full-time on year and a half on this, that we have not completely replaced my income, but we've done pretty well to, comparatively speaking, I think, to a lot of brokers out of the gate. We did do six figures in sales our first 12 months. And keep in mind, that's top line revenue. And that's another thing that I want to be sure that brokers remember as you're getting into this business. The commissions you make, when you're an employee, what you take home is what you take home. That's your net. Where here as a business owner, what you're bringing in is your top line revenue, and you've got all your business expenses that come from that. So making, $10,000 a month as an employee versus making $10,000 in sales a month as a business owner are two different things.
Yeah. Although, I mean, the one thing I've always loved about the business is the expenses are low. I mean, there's really, yeah. I mean, once you're out of the gate, up front, there's some expenses, in some of the things that you need to do to get started. But after that, it's more, the day to day. It's not like you're paying, huge utility bills or anything like that. It's just out, and a lot of it, in my case, and it would be difficult to do now with the current COVID situation, was entertainment. I mean, I lived and died by lunches.
Right.
And you obviously you're picking up the tab, but you're out with a referral source. And I always tell the story too. One of the, I always talk about the home runs you hit in this business, and I'm waiting for you to get yours, where the home run's great in two respects. Is one, it's repeat business, where you get out of the bed in the morning and you just know that there's going to be a very lucrative day almost every day, as long as you can continue to massage that relationship. And two, it's life changing, because the commissions, unlike doing one-off deals all the time, you have one source. And I've had a couple of my students who are, and remind me offline, I'll tell you, maybe you can connect with them, where they've been invited into equipment dealers and say, look, I want you to do all of my business. And there might be some rev sharing going on there or something like that, but they're killing it. And that's kind of what you're looking for in this business. And it kind of makes, it takes it from kind of replacing your job to a very lucrative, really good move on your part. And I think that kind of happened to me maybe a year into my business. And, it brings me back to what I was out to lunch with a referral source. And I used to try to set up 2 lunches a week. If I could get 2 referral sources to have lunch with me, and they were typically equipment sales guys and girls who I'd say, hey, I'm going to be down in your area. Can we just meet for lunch? And usually they'd always say yes. And over that lunch, you just kind of give them everything that you're doing, your add value, that you're going to really be ultra responsive, that you can eventually, when you get into with the right funding sources, that you can compete for rate, that you'll fast turnaround time, and that you are going to help them sell more equipment. That was probably my golden add value. I forget what you call it. It was the main theme of all my discussions was, hey, look, if you team with me, I'm an ex-sales guy. And I was an ex-equipment sales guy. I'm going to help you sell more equipment through finance. So, but I go out to lunch with, and I can't remember, this is years ago. And I literally came out of that lunch and bumped into somebody else that I had lunch with previously. And they're like, hey, Buzz, do you want to come into this might be a Fortune 100 company, for this Fortune 500 company? I have a call with them and they're not happy with their current finance source. And I'm doing, millions of dollars with them every year. Do you want to come in? And here, me being a little guy, kind of new on the block, I was thinking, well, I can't really compete for this big corporation's business. And here I was able to, and it kind of changed my whole life around. There's 2 things you should learn about that. One is that, first, don't prejudge that you can't do these bigger deals, because you can. Because you'll find a bank that will, and it's funny because my banks coached me through that. I was still green on these types of deals. And the right banker, and when I see this guy out, I always tell him, I go, you really changed my life because you taught me some things that I didn't know and changed my life. So you don't prejudge. And the second thing is that you never know when that big deal is going to come if you're out doing the right things.
Mhm.
And like I said, I didn't even have a set appointment with this guy. I walk out of one lunch and I bump into the guy and he says, hey, this is in downtown Pittsburgh. He goes, hey, will you come in and call a joint sales call with me? Perfect. I'm in,
Right.
and bam, life has changed for me. So, and that's what in kind of in my new training, I kind of talk about getting started, the foundational stuff, what you need to do on a weekly, daily basis just to keep doing these deals and making decent income, but keeping your eye out for that one big opportunity where an equipment dealer comes in and says, hey, I want you to be my in-house finance guy or whatever, like where the business starts flowing and the commissions start rolling, which has happened to me as well. So we're kind of running long here, but we got a little bit of a late start. I got two additional questions for you. Any challenges that you're facing in your business right now that you'd like to talk about, or any?
Sure. One thing to think about now that we're under the COVID situation, that I had someone asking me the other day, one of my bankers called me to just check what was going on and was asking what kind of deals we were working on, see if I had any referrals. And we're still staying very busy, but the things that have been changing in the business that will probably be different for the next 6 months at least is it's taking longer to get deals done, and I'm having to talk to more lending sources to get them done because a lot of the lenders have pulled back. Because you got to remember, the people that make decisions on credit are generally analytical people that don't like to make mistakes. And the country's been blindsided by this COVID shutdown. And it's where you have an expected consistent source of income from a business that's just operating, and all of a sudden it can't operate, even in industries that usually are easy and great deals to do, and like dental practices, little medical offices, things that are usually very consistent. And now you've been blindsided as a lending source that those things are uncertain now. Uncertainty creates more questions. So one thing to keep in mind as you're packaging deals for lenders is you're going to be asked what the business was doing pre-COVID, how they battled through COVID, and what they think they're going to do next. And you're going to start to be asked on full doc deals where you're going to be getting tax returns and everything. You're going to be asked for monthly financial statements from 2019 to compare to 2020. So I did a deal recently that I just submitted that I had to get month by month, January through May of 2019, so they can compare month by month, January through May of 2020. And they're going to ask more questions. So what I would say has been a challenge, and I would advise brokers to do, is realize that that's going to happen, that you have to be ready to answer those questions, and you have to prepare the borrower to expect to be asked those questions. Because there's a lot of these borrowers that could just walk into a bank and get deals that are going to be having to answer questions. They're going to have to explain their financials. And there's a lot of them that aren't used to it. So I think as a broker, we're going to get more opportunities, but at the same time, we're going to have our lenders shifting in what they're doing. Because the sales guys that we talk to at these banks that are the RMs, like the ones that used to work for me, they know credit okay, but they're sales guys. That's why they're the front line. They're dealing with businesses. They're telling us everything's great and they're going to keep doing deals. The back office credit people are changing what they're doing. So there's a little disconnect there between what they say to do in the field and what's really happening. I'm not saying they're lying. I'm just saying that there's additional questions that are being asked that the frontline salesperson may not be fully in tune with. So I would just tell any of our listeners, any of the people that are looking at brokering, just be ready to answer additional questions related to COVID and how they're handling it and how they're going to deal with something like that happening in the future. And a big thing that I've been asked a lot more lately too is making sure that after the loan is done, the borrower has a little bit of money to absorb any ups and downs that happen. And that wasn't as big of an issue before, and it's being asked a lot more now.
Wow, that's all really great insight, especially with them asking for comparative statements and so forth. It makes complete sense because just as you mentioned, some of these traditional businesses that have always been kind of printing cash are now kind of been turned on their heads, and banks and funding sources are mindful of that, and they're going to make sure that they're not lending to somebody that's ready to kind of close their doors. And there's some industries, I'm guessing, that are going to get completely destroyed as far as getting any type of financing, but I won't get into that here. So, well, we've gone through a lot. I guess last, Bill, is let's talk about your company. If you like people reaching out to you, maybe some of the deals that if they have an interest in co-brokering. I know some brokers hate co-brokering. I used to not like it, but I did it when it made sense. So maybe kind of get into a little bit about what you're doing at Four Kings Capital, and if anyone reaches out to you, so you're not getting pestered with any nuisance calls. But if something makes sense and you can help somebody out, they can team up with you.
Sure. Again, I generally am not a big fan of co-brokering, but I am becoming a little more open to it but I'm selective in the brokers that I work with. One thing I don't do is broker chains. So if you've got a deal referred to you from another broker and you're the broker in the middle, don't call me. If you've got a deal where you are the broker on it, you're dealing direct with the borrower and you're having trouble getting it placed, and maybe you think I can add some value, give me a call or shoot me an email and we can talk about it. My initial questions will always be the same, and I may come across harsher than you are used to as a broker, is I'm going to understand where the deal's been, why are you calling me, and what are we trying to do here? And if I size it up and I think, okay, we have something that I think we can help each other out with, I am going to expect, and my lender is going to expect, that we're going to have direct client contact along the way somewhere. We're not going to play this game where a broker is the one talking to the borrower and they're the middleman. They tell me something and I go talk to the lender. I don't play that. If you brought me in, you brought me in because you couldn't get it done on your own. So you are working in essence under me like if you were one of my lenders. You're still going to be in the deal. I'm not going to cut you out. We'll do an agreement and everything. You're going to help me get info from the borrower, but there's not going to be this disconnect. We're going to have an initial call with the borrower where we'll get on the phone. I'll explain who I am, that I'm helping you with this. And you're going to run point on the borrower side of gathering what we need, but there's not going to be that separation. And if you understand that, I'm happy to talk to you. My website is fourkingscapital.com. My email is very simply bill@fourkingscapital.com. My direct phone line is 580-583-1017. And that goes right to my cell. That's call me or text me. And I'm happy to visit with brokers and, see if I can be a resource. As I mentioned earlier, I don't usually mess with smaller deals. If you need help on SBA, it's got to be a deal that's at least 350 and has some legs to it. Same thing with real estate. If it's an equipment deal, of course, we'll look at smaller deals case by case, and factoring working capital deals. I could be a resource there just because I know a lot of lending sources. So if you have a specialized type of deal, I may be able to find a lender that'll do it. But like I said, I don't mean to sound, brash about it, but that's the way that I have to do things if I'm going to work with any co-brokers.
Gotcha. Well, awesome, Bill. I'm crossing my fingers that we have better success on the production of this. I'm pretty confident that we will. I've got the headset that gives me the best sound quality, and it's so far in looking at the screen, it looks like both of our cameras are pretty good. And by the way, your sound was awesome. And not only your sound, but the content that you're providing to the BizLoan Consultants community is awesome. And I appreciate you stepping up to the plate and doing it again and kind of doing a redo on this. But and by the magic of editing, I will make sure I include your email spelled out and your phone number and everything that you just discussed. So once again, thank you. I appreciate you joining me here today. Be safe out there and keep kicking butt like you have been. Appreciate it, Bill.
Thanks for having me, Buzz. Thanks a lot.
Hey guys, thanks for joining me with Bill on this call. As always, please subscribe, then leave your comments and questions below. You can also reach out to me at sglover@bizloanconsultants.com. Take care and have a great day.